Hello and welcome to After Scientology, Straight Up and Vertical, the weekly show where Tony Ortega and I get together and we go over the week's events in the world of Scientology. As reported on Tony's Substack, you can see the address right there on the screen. Tony, welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much, Chris. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, we're gonna take a look at another week in review here. There was some pretty interesting reporting, starting with this was kind of funny because last week we posted we recorded the show. No, we still don't know when the date is, and then the next day, right as the show is posting, oh yes, we have the date. So I guess it's Halloween for this IAS event.
Right. So the way it works is Friday night is the night when Dave gives his big speech to the biggest crowd, and that will be on Halloween. Halloween's Friday this year.
Wow.
And they fill that tent with as many people as they can, and he will give them a big rundown for a couple of hours on all the achievements they've done in the last year. The idea is it's the anniversary around this time of year when the International Association of Scientologists, the IAS, was founded, I believe now 41 years ago. It's the membership organization for Scientology. It's basically a slush fund for Miscavige. All they do is raise money and then he spends it. So Friday night, he gives them updates on what all the wonderful things that their money is buying. Then Saturday night, it'll be November 1st. They will have what they call Patrons Ball. And that's when they change the arrangement of the tent so that it's tables for dinner. So far fewer people fit in there. But it's for celebrating the people that have donated the most. And basically the top donors that have achieved a new status. You might have given $10 million to Scientology, but if you haven't passed the next step, which might be 11.5 million or something, you're not going to get a trophy this year. You only get a trophy if you keep pushing up farther and farther. So whatever your new status is, whether you're gold meritorious, which means you've given $1 million, they celebrate those people and they get to pose on stage with their trophy. That's Saturday night. And then Sunday night, they have this charity concert. They bring in their musicians, and supposedly this is when they show the benefit to the local community that's not just Scientology, and hand out some checks to keep everybody happy that they're there. So October 31st to November 2nd, later than usual, not the latest. 2 years ago, when they revived this after the pandemic, I believe it was like November 3rd to 5th or something. So this is not the latest they've been, but it is a little bit late. And Halloween, interesting. Our people, you tell me. I kind of doubt that Scientologists will come to this thing in costume and make a party out of it. I think it's more serious than that. What Miscavige is going to be talking about, right?
It's not really Scientology style to do Halloween, especially with the IAS event. This is the big formal to do. This is when everybody dresses up. This is when they give out trophies bigger than people. So it's kind of about the how do I put this? I'm looking for the word. Halloween just doesn't quite go with um the atmosphere of the night. There we go. That's the word that Dave is trying to create. It's supposed to be it's a regal event. There's the word. There's the word. So yeah, so Halloween doesn't quite fit in with that, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. But it is interesting that it fell on that day. And of course, um, something I'll bring up today about the IAS, just since it is the annual IAS event, and I'm a little bummed I couldn't go over to the UK. Alex invited me over to do the protesting. I really wanted to go this year, but I couldn't make it work. But one thing that I will say about the IAS that doesn't get remarked on very often, that I think is true, is I don't think L. Ron Hubbard approved of or even knew that the IAS was a thing. He was often hiding when Miscavige came up with it. And
Well,
the IAS. Mhm.
it was started in '84. He was
Yeah,
already fully in seclusion by that point.
that's right.
Under him, there was it the Hubbard Association of
Yeah,
Scientologists or something like that?
that's right.
And it was like $25 a year or something.
And
right?
it was a one-time
Yes,
deal.
yes, there was a membership organization, so you would have
Yep.
a membership card, but it
Yep.
was not primarily a fundraising organization, right?
That's
So
right.
the reason why it came to be in '84, and Chuck Beatty has real good knowledge on this, but basically, Scientology was really under attack. The
Hmm.
FBI raid had happened in '77. The prosecutions for that were in '79 and '80. Mary Sue Hubbard had gone to prison. And then the thing that really scared them, Hubbard went into seclusion in February 1980. And then what really scared them was they had these two lawsuits that were really, really scary for them.
Yep.
Larry Wollersheim had got, was in Los Angeles, and what made, and then the Tichborne Christofferson lawsuit in Portland. And what made those two lawsuits so bad for Scientology was both of those people were suing because they had been damaged by the technology. It wasn't fair game. It wasn't, the way they were treated as Sea Org members. No, they were suing that Scientology itself was harmful.
Yep.
And juries agreed with them. See, this is, David Miscavige learned his lesson. You cannot put this stuff in front of a jury. A jury is never going to have sympathy for Scientology.
Yep.
They both ended up with $30 million verdicts, which in
Yep.
1984-85, that was a lot of money to Scientology.
That's right.
So it was one of those lawsuits were really hot and heavy that a few Scientologists got together. This was not Hubbard, and created the International Association of Scientologists in 1984.
That's right.
And it was primarily to raise money to defend themselves in court. It's a legal slush fund. That was its purpose from the very beginning.
That's right. They told people right from the get go, we are at war. We're at war with psychiatry. We're at war with the US government. We're at war with all these people. And we need a war chest. That is how they positioned it. That's how they raised money for it. It was an emergency thing. And this IAS organization was put together. And the funny thing about it is it's completely contrary to L. Ron Hubbard policy. He
See,
creates a
that's the thing
membership.
is Hubbard, right? Hubbard was
Right?
about sell books, create auditors. Sell
That's right.
books, create auditors. If you do
That's
that,
right.
you expand, and new auditors bring in more people, and it just builds on itself. That was his whole goal.
That's
And
right.
he wasn't into facilities. He talked about it just needs to be a clean, well lighted place. It's not a big deal where it takes place. And for Miscavige, it's all about raising money and then proving to the donors that their money is going for something. So that's why you have these ideal orgs.
That's right.
Miscavige tells them that these new buildings they're buying are there to bring in new people, but they don't bring in new people. All they do is convince the wealthy people that their money is going to something worthwhile. So
That's
it's
right.
just kind of it's so the IAS is there to raise that money, and they turned it into a game,
That's
which
right.
that is Hubbard policy, right? So they
Oh,
turned it
well,
into a
oh,
game.
very much so. Oh, yeah, yeah. In fact, the whole system you described at the very beginning of this, the fact that you have to donate this year or move up in membership status this year in order to get a trophy, keeps it current, keeps it going. It's a constantly revolving game, right? And this is all Miscavige's brainchild because Hubbard said, "Don't do this. This is not how you run my organizations according to the policies." Debbie
He
Cook
said
broke it
that
all down
specifically.
in her
He said
email,
that
right?
specifically. Don't fundraise. He said that
That's right.
specifically. Don't
That's right.
fundraise. That's not how you do this. You sell books and make auditors, and that's what will be successful. And he was right for a long time. But David
Yep.
Miscavige knows the real score. He knows the real numbers. He knows that people aren't joining this organization and they're not going to sell a lot of books. So he has switched it entirely to this idea of fundraising. And the IAS is that fundraising arm, and they gamify it, they make it into a game. And then so this event is big because this is when those people get their recognition. Do you want to get it? And see, I really am fascinated with how it all evolves. I keep track of all this. So, for
Yep.
example, just a few years ago, you would, if you had donated $1 million, you get what's called a gold meritorious trophy. Looks like a basketball trophy, and even if you donate $1 million, it's just you or you and your spouse on the stage with the trophy. It's not. It was only the number one person at that particular patrons ball, and they have more than one a year sometimes.
Mhm.
That it was only the number one person where Miscavige would get in the frame. So it was like he's only going to recognize the person that brought in the most. Well, that's changed now. Now he's posing with like the top five or something, you know. So,
Yep. Yep.
it's okay if you've only donated 20 million because Dave's in the picture with you. Maybe you haven't donated as much as Trish or Tom Cummins, but Dave's still going to get in the picture with you. Little changes like that.
Yes.
I think he obsesses over this more than anything else. How do I keep these donors coming back for more and more? And so people will ask me, how come we didn't see so and so this year at the IAS? I said because maybe they didn't reach that next level yet. You know,
Mhm. That's right. And I think this is important to comment on because we're talking here about the entire nature of how Miscavige runs this thing because it is distinctly different from how Hubbard did. And we talk about how Miscavige at a personal level beats up on people, treats his inner circle like garbage, does all this very personal, horrible stuff. But organizationally, I like to highlight every now and again just how far off the path Miscavige has taken this whole thing. And the funny and even ironic thing at the beginning of this whole story is that it was the missions, the very successful missions of the 1970s that were being run by business people in California mainly, who were booming Scientology, bringing in college students hand over fist, bringing in my parents, bringing in people left, right, and center into these missions. And that was what was funding the legal costs of Scientology was a percentage of those missions. And so they were flush and they had this money until the 77 raid. And the US government comes after them, and suddenly their legal bills are skyrocketing. So they go and destroy the mission network to get all the money they can out of it. And then they create the IAS because the missions aren't giving them any more money anymore. So they kind of basically the moral of the story here that I like to again point up to with the IAS is this is Miscavige's brainchild, but it's actually the beginning of the end of Scientology. Because it's the implosion of the mission network and that never got fixed, and so they've never had a good public inflow line ever since then, and it's
yeah,
been struggle, struggle, struggle ever since, forcing Miscavige to have to recalibrate his entire organization to bring money in on status rather than on clear and OT and making auditors. So it's just one of those times when I get to really get into the nuts and bolts of how Scientology really is being run,
yeah.
and everything you said is exactly the picture of this. So here we go with our AIS event this year. So now we moving on to the next story. We have a look at L. Ron Hubbard, South Africa, and his support for apartheid. And you had a little window look at that this week. What'd you cover?
Well, we've talked about that a few times, and
Mhm.
I've got this little thing going on Saturdays where um, I'm nearing my 30th anniversary reporting on Scientology, and some of those stories from those earlier places I've worked are kind of on platforms where it's hard to find things, or maybe there's a lot of ads to wade through. And so I just started this little project where each Saturday I'm grabbing one of those older stories from Phoenix New Times or New Times Los Angeles or the Village Voice or my previous .org website and bringing them over to Substack. Not only so that it's this thing that's actively updating now, but also I love the Substack. It's so clean and ad free. The stories look so good. And this one I was specifically asked about. One of my readers pointed out that I did this story about the 1960 lecture that L. Ron Hubbard did on the last day of 1960, December 31st, 1960. He was in Washington, D.C., and he gave a lecture about South Africa, where he had been spending some time. And at one point, this was, right on the Scientology catalog, a talk about South Africa. But years ago, Scientology took that off the catalog. They don't want people to know about it, and the audio was available. And what I did was I put together a video just so that so you can see the words as he's saying them. to keep up with it, and it's just incredible the things he says. I mean, it's the 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 things he says about the black people of South Africa. They just don't have the intelligence to be able to do Scientology, and it's just wow. I mean, I think it was probably shocking even then just how racist this was. But,
Yeah.
you know, don't just say, well, it was a product of its time. No, I don't. This is bad. And no wonder Scientology wants to suppress it. So I decided to bring it back on Substack, and make that available to everybody again. We've referred to it a number of times, like with the Lenny Riefenstahl story and everything. But yeah, it's just if you really want to get a sense of who Hubbard was, this is a great look at it. And he was very supportive of the apartheid regime in South Africa, and was privately corresponding with the prime minister there, and kept talking about how supportive Scientology is with the rightist cause. L. Ron Hubbard, is no question, was a classic mid-century right-wing reactionary, and very supportive of South African apartheid. So again, I got asked about this the other day by a reader. Said they had a hard time finding that story, and I understand on those other platforms it's getting tougher. I thought I'm going to bring it to Substack so everybody can see it again. Listen to Hubbard say those words. So if you're curious about that, take it up, take a look at it.
Yeah, it's a real important one. This is one not to miss. So I'm really glad you're reposting it because it's one of those little windows into who Hubbard really was and how he really thought, which is rare when you look at how he stage managed himself or how he presented or how Scientology presents him. They covered up or have literally deleted out of a lot of lectures all kinds of stuff that Hubbard said that was, let's just say colorful anecdotes or commentary that he had, and his racism was obvious and pretty. He wasn't a flaming, antagonistic, angry racist, but it was so there. And it was actually kind of worse because it was almost at the level of Hannah Arendt's The Banality of Evil. It's sort of the banality of Hubbard's racism was so casual and so just assumed. It was, well, of course this is how it is. These black people, they don't know anything. They don't know what they're talking. They'll steal the desk from under you if you turn around. They'll just take things because it's just how they are. Don't you see? And he was just so like matter of fact about it that it was just ugh, ugh,
Yeah.
you know.
Mhm.
Um, so and it's really in South Africa where that comes out. The South African things, from the Cecil Rhodes, past life memories to the treasure hunting to the Constitution trying to take over a country. It's really all encapsulated in that period of that area of the world. How Hubbard dealt with Africa really showed so much of who he really was. So it's
Yeah.
definitely worth looking at. Um, Okay, now we have an active investigation by the federal government right now into a company called Dream Exchange, which has Scientology connections. And there's an update on this. What is the deal?
Wall Street Journal did a really good piece about this small Chicago startup called Dream Exchange. It's a it's run as the CEO is a white Scientologist in Chicago named Joe Cicala, and his idea was to create a stock exchange in Chicago that caters specifically to black businesses. And so that's why it's Dream Exchange, like Martin Luther King's "I Had a Dream." And what the Wall Street Journal found was he was not really telling his investors that he's a big Scientologist. He's an OT Scientologist. He's a gold meritorious donor to the IAS, and so he's giving millions of dollars to Scientology, and that it's a Scientology run business. It's like run on a wise type business, and wasn't saying anything to investors about that. So the SEC appears to now be investigating that company. It could be in trouble. Meanwhile, a former employee from that company went on LinkedIn and wrote about some of the problems that it says it wants black investment, but it treats its black employees very poorly. That's his claim. I don't have evidence one way or the other, but I thought it would be interesting to see what he had to say. His name is Jeffrey Farrell, and he's posted a couple things on LinkedIn now about the problems at the company. So, and specifically that they were related to Scientology, that it was Scientology run, that had Scientology principles, Scientology culture, and this was all being hidden from the investors. So that's I think that that company's in big trouble. I think that the CEO might be in big trouble. I don't know that Scientology is going to get in any trouble for it because it's not a Scientology run organization, and the SEC won't really be looking at Scientology, I don't think. But it's fascinating if the SEC ultimately does file a lawsuit, we could get some real inside information about what it's like when a Scientologist tries to run an organization and milk it for donations to Scientology. We've seen it in the past. Remember Richie Akunto and survival insurance. I mean, that, no question, the guy was bleeding survival insurance dry so he could get bigger trophies at the IAS.
That's right. That's exactly right. And being run, let's be clear that being a Scientology company means that the owner of the company is a high level or ranking Scientologist of some kind, runs the company on the same policies that the churches of Scientology are run on, as written by L. Ron Hubbard. And they package this whole thing and sell it and consult with Scientologists who have businesses, and they call this the Wise Consultancy. And that's the connection with the church here, where no, the church isn't going to get in legal trouble over this. The shenanigans Dream Exchange engages in is going to be on them. But the fact that it's being run as a Scientology operation is, for me, I'm really, really happy about this exposure, because what tends to happen is these companies fly under the radar. They're out there, dentist offices, chiropractors, right? That usual kind of company operation, or somehow it gets involved with stocks or investments or something like those other guys who got busted recently. Um, we see this happening, but it's not really known in society, in the world, that Scientology does this. People don't generally know about this the same way they know about, Scientology and Tom Cruise, or even the sauna detox thing or something, or the Narcanon programs where people have literally died. That has been pretty shut down on the part of Scientology now because of the exposure and abuses. But this WISE area is still an area that doesn't really get exposed a lot. And that's why I'm particularly happy about this story. It tends to be that the Scientologists will break the law by demanding employees do Scientology as part of the condition of their employment. They'll send them off to a church and do classes, and they run their company according to these things. And we've seen, how many do you think lawsuits, EEOC investigations of companies, maybe 4 or 5 over the years,
Well,
maybe?
more than that. But it's not a high number. But yeah,
Right.
there have been half a dozen at least.
Right. And they tend to get local press, but they don't tend to get national attention. So people don't know Scientology is actually doing this. So I'm hoping that this is going to be more broadly exposed, so that there's more awareness of the fact that Scientology is actually infiltrating businesses. People just don't look for it. They don't see it. They don't think about it. And now maybe, this is the kind of thing that could get that out there. If you're seeing anything connected with WISE, L. Ron Hubbard, Hubbard administration system, or anything like that, you got to run from that company there, because it's almost a guarantee. What we found, Tony, you tell me, for between Postcard Mania and some of the other Scientology run companies in Clearwater, we've seen story after story from former employees about how abusive these places are.
Well, I mean, they force Scientology on you, which
Yeah,
is against the law. I mean, it cannot be a condition of your employment that you go to Scientology courses, and yet we see that again and again in some of these businesses.
that's
Uh,
right.
and I've seen the EEOC intervene. We've seen the lawsuits. So,
Yeah,
yeah, this was just what's great about this one is it's the Wall Street Journal, so it's gotten this
exactly.
huge exposure,
Yes,
and the government's actually doing something. But it's again, the government is not doing something about Scientology. The government is doing something about the Dream Exchange and a Scientologist. And it'll be interesting to see what kind of what they put him through.
It will be. It will be. It would be interesting if at some point, probably in the future, I can't hope for too much here, but it would be interesting if somebody, at the Journal or even a Rolling Stone or Daily, I mean, any of these, even Daily Beast could do it. If they would do a collection, a sort of compendium of, look, this is the history of Scientology and businesses in America. Like, look at what they do, right? There's a pattern here. And I think there could be a story eventually there. We can hope. Anyway. And now we have another update on the Masterson civil legal case. And this was the one that got a bit derailed with this whole AI fiasco that we've been talking about for a few weeks. So now there's responses back and forth. What's the latest on this thing?
Well, I like this latest reply from John Kucera, who's the partner at Boyce Schiller, who had to admit that yes, his firm had been using AI for citations and had not caught that some of them were hallucinatory. He's kind of fallen on his sword there, and he's the lawyer for the Jane Does in the civil lawsuit against Masterson and the Church of Scientology. Scientology, of course, went for the throat. They want sanctions. They even want the court to consider, you know, suspending these lawyers. But the thing that Kucera was really pushing back on is they want the Jane Does to forfeit the arguments they were making in that section of the brief where the
Right.
hallucinatory AI citations came in. And Kucera is there saying, once again, I'm accepting responsibility for this. He knows he's going to get sanctioned, but the women shouldn't pay a price. It wasn't their fault.
That's right.
Don't throw out their arguments just because Scientology is asking you to. I thought he argued that really well, and that was his response this week. So now I think we just have to wait and see what the court decides. And yeah, this is a big issue for courts right now, and courts are coming down pretty hard on law firms that are doing this. And some experts in the field have said that this is the first really big AI blunder by a big prestigious national firm.
Yeah.
So, the courts maybe needs to take that into consideration. But we wait and we assume that these attorneys are going to have to pay a price. But you hope that the women don't and that the lawsuit doesn't. And so, because remember, this is the same court that restored this lawsuit 5 years ago when Scientology had forced it into arbitration. And this court was decided no, the things that they're alleging, this harassment once they went to the LAPD, this harassment they believe is campaigned by the church occurred years after they had left the church. So no, the contracts they signed while they were Scientologists, forcing them into arbitration, no longer apply. So that this is the court that made that decision, and so I think that they're generally sympathetic to these women in this case. And but then I'm sure the rest of the country is going to be looking to see what they do about this AI blunder. So I'm glad that Kucera got one more chance, and I really like what he had to say. I think he was doing the right thing for sticking up for the women.
Good. Yeah, I do too. And I think that you're bringing up all the exact right factors at play here. We should not, and I'm sure you would hope at least that judges would, this judge in particular will, be sensitive to the fact that this has nothing to do with the clients, with the victims of Masterson here, and they should absolutely not be punished for this. But at the same time, an example needs to be made, and a punish, they can't just let this slide. This is a big law firm making a big mistake, and this AI thing is mathematically speaking, it's going to hallucinate forever. It's just a consequence of the technology. It's not something they're going to fix. So this has got to be dealt with now, early. Cut it off. No AI on these sensitive things. And legal cases are so incredibly context specific, and you really have to have your thinking cap on with these documents.
Yeah,
right? And you can't just leave it to some LLM tech to, sort of maybe get it right. It doesn't work like that in the legal of all places. Quantum physics, astrophysics, medicine and law are not areas you can be maybe about. So
right. Yeah, what good point.
yeah. All right. So moving on now. This was actually one of my favorite stories this week because I love watching Grant Cardone get slapped down. So tell us about Grant Cardone's new appearance on the bunker this week.
Yeah, England, United Kingdom is a little more sensitive to advertising and limits and stuff like that. And what's really interesting to me is that there was a ad on Facebook where Grant was pitching this idea that he's going to give you the secret to how to make, create a $5 million business out of nothing.
Yeah.
And somebody complained. One person complained. This is incredible to me. And this, top UK ad council, whatever they call it, ASA, decided to look into it. And they came up with a ruling. Yes, this was misleading. And they noted that the ad's already been taken down, but it's a slap on the wrist telling Grant Cardone, don't post things like this again.
Yeah.
I'm blown away. They did this on one complaint and found that, yeah, Grant Cardone was being very misleading. That, you can't just tell people, hey, I'm going to give you an outline and you're going to create a $5 million business. No, I mean, there could be many different kinds of outcomes. When they asked his company about it, the company responded, well, he's just relating what his experience was on the Discovery Channel show Undercover Billionaire. And that was their excuse for him, saying that, that you could do this too. But anyway, I mean, I'm always amazed that this guy doesn't run into more regulatory problems.
Me too.
He's just a motivational speaker, a social media overshare, and uh, it's interesting because his Scientology involvement does come up. He's a big donor. He's been something of an enforcer for David Miscavige in the past.
Yeah.
And but his followers, I think, don't doesn't bother them. So anyway, it is fun to see him get, even though it's just a slap on the wrist. I think it is fun to see him get caught, and I gotta say, I'm amazed that a regulatory body would do something like that on only one complaint.
That is really amazing, almost an outlier in itself. But I will always be there to watch Grant get smacked around because the guy is, as you said, he's just such a ham hock. The guy is just he has just no shame. I mean, and I met him in real life. He's really like that, like all the time, and he's kind of like a Miscavige clone in
I
a
was
lot of
going to
ways
say that
too.
he probably just barely is taller than David Miscavige by half an inch, right? I mean, they're both little dudes.
Yeah, they're little guys and they way overcompensate. I mean, I'll go there. I mean, it's absolutely true. The guy is just, he's so, it's just so, it's so exaggerated. It's annoying to watch. You know what I mean? You're just like, get away from me with that weird energy you have. Um, all right, moving on to talk about weird energy. So Tom Cruise and Diarmus broke up. What's
Well,
the
that's what the tabloids are saying. Um, I you know I I'm not an entertainment reporter. I'm not following Tom Cruise around. I don't know when they started talking about the two of them together. I told people I don't know. I don't know if they're. And then a photograph showed up of the two of them holding hands in Vermont earlier this year, I think. And so it's okay. They appear to be a couple. He's 63, she's 37, whatever you think of that. But they're both movie stars, So anyway, now they're saying that it's over, and it's the Sun basing it on an insider. So who knows? I again, I do not claim to have any knowledge one way or the other, but I think I mentioned it for a couple of reasons. First of all, speaking of the IAS, I mean, this is one of the things we always look for. Tom lives in the UK. Travolta lives in Florida. So Travolta goes to the L. Ron Hubbard birthday event in Florida. Tom goes to the IAS event in England.
Yeah.
And when Dave resurrected the IAS event in 2023 after the pandemic, Tom made a big show. He flew there in his helicopter. And on the second night, the patrons ball, he let all kinds of Scientologists take. They had a bar, they had a barrier, so you couldn't touch Tom. But they stood there next to people taking pictures with everybody, and then they allowed them to post it on social media. You know, those people cannot post those photos on Facebook unless the church has given them the okay. So to me, this was, there had been a lot. The Daily Mail in particular was claiming that Tom had left and all this garbage. Everybody, all the tabs love to tell that story. And so I think on purpose they had Tom fly in very, very noticeably on his helicopter and then pose for these photos. Then last year, just one photo got through that we saw that was on social media, but definitely he was there again. So this year, of course, what we were all curious about was, would he be there with Anna?
Right.
I would say even if they were still a couple, he probably wouldn't take her to that event. But you never know. He has when he got his Freedom Medal of Valor in October 2004, he was there with a date.
That's right.
Um,
That's right.
what's her name? Pecoraro? I can't remember her first name. It'll come to me. Anyway,
I
uh,
sorry,
it was
too long
yeah,
ago.
it was before Nazanin Boniani. It was before Katie Holmes. So he had a date for that one. So, of course, it would be interesting to see if he would have come up with Anna. But now they're saying it's over. Okay. Well, I just happened to get a flyer this week that was so timely because they're having this virtual all ideal USA fundraising event on Sunday. So the day after you put this up. Um, they've had these before. We've had some really funny pictures from them. They want people to zoom in so they can be hit up for money. Can you? Oh my
Yeah.
God. It's just
Yeah.
like, why would you log in? You're just going to be hit up for thousands of dollars. So they made a flyer for it, and it's basically a Maverick, a flyer from Top Gun Maverick is what it is. And you see Tom from behind. It's AI. It's not him, but it's all suggestive of Tom. So they've done this in the past before. They're definitely trying to use Tom's fame to help them raise money. And so I just thought that was funny timing that we got that flyer this week, the same time we got the sad news that it's
Of
over. And
course.
I thought maybe at Sunday's event they can rustle him up a new girlfriend. I don't know.
It'll be the number one battle plan item for David Miscavige at this week's at the IAS event. Find Tom a new woman. Dave seems to assess over Tom's romantic status, so maybe so, maybe so. I guess we'll see. I will say that I hope that is true, so that Anna can have dodged that bullet, because
Right.
you know I will say that because I don't think there could be too many more toxic relationships you could get into than getting into a relationship with Tom Cruise. Just
Right.
to be blunt about that, and not because I think he's a physically abusive person. It's significantly worse than that. He's a Scientology abusive person, so it's actually a whole life problem.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, and finally, we come to this new Sea Org member testimonial, Saint Hill. What do we got?
Yeah, I mean, look, St. Hill puts these things out. I just thought this one, it's really struck me because the way they're presenting this guy, it's like, this is the great new recruit. This is the guy. And to me, I just wanted to point out how amazing it is in 2025. The Church of Scientology that we know is hurting, that we know has been exposed time and time again by the media, that they still in 2025 can get a 23-year-old recent college grad to give up everything and sign a Sea Org billion-year contract. I just, it's amazing. And he says it in there. He's there to clear the planet. And that was the other thing I wanted to make. The point I wanted to make is that, we've heard your stories about what the Sea Org was like in your time.
Mhm.
And of course, we hear stories about what it was like actually at sea with Hubbard on the Apollo. But this is 2025 and people are still making that commitment, and they're still just as dedicated to that idea, even though it should be obvious to everyone that Scientology's hurting, it's not what it once was. But I don't know, it just struck me, and I just thought it was interesting that they really put together this lengthy testimonial from him, and I thought people would want to see it.
Absolutely. And I think it's reflective of where Scientology is at right now, because one of the things that we talk about is how most of their new people or people, their membership now is either the old, crusty, never going to leave, been there since the 1950s and 60s kind of people, or, came in through the missions in the 70s, right? Those folks, I mean, they're dyed in the wool, but they're kids, right? Their kids and their kids are the ones who are now being rolled into Scientology. And a lot of them are rejecting it. We know this numerically. A lot of them are rejecting it. But when they don't, you get this. This is exactly what it looks
Yeah,
like. Kid of a Scientologist, sure, goes off to college, but they wrangle him back in and let's get him in the Sea Org, right? And that's the really that bond is kind of what they're relying on now to kind of keep it going. But because Miscavige has shut down, reproduction in the Sea Org, the most fanatical, dedicated members aren't having kids, so they're not gonna, necessarily, experience reproduction as the basis of morale. It doesn't work like that in Scientology, and that's why they're shrinking. But this is actually kind of exemplary of the modern second gen Scientologists. This is kind of what it looks like. And
yeah,
this is how they're kind of keeping going. So, from that perspective, take a look at the article and see, kind of really how blase this guy's testimonial is. There's
mhm,
no rockets firing off. This guy's not talking about OT. He's not talking about supernatural powers. When you compare the testimonials today to the stuff that they were writing in the 70s and 80s, it is so tame. It's so
yeah,
toned down,
mhm.
I mean, don't you think?
I agree. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it's just a different kind of Scientology. And again, I think from my perspective, big picture, and I think you would agree, we're really seeing a decline, right?
Oh yeah.
It's just going down, 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 just taking its time, floating on
I
inertia.
mean, it's an
You know,
interesting moment. I was thinking about that this morning actually on my bike ride. There's no question there was a mass exodus. There's been several actually over the years,
yeah,
but definitely a mass exodus in the early 2000s that Miscavige caused with his golden age of tech and stuff like
that's right.
that.
That's right.
And it probably went from about 40,000 down to about 20,000 over several years.
Yeah,
But I think it's going to be you're going to see it harder to go lower than that because think about somebody that's been in Scientology for 20 years now. Think of what they've put up with. Think of the
that's
regging.
right.
Think of the fundraisers. These are the bitter enders. It's going to be you're not going to see a lot of people all of a sudden leave now because they're so invested. They're so dug in at this point. So it's probably going to stay around the same at this point for now. But it's not enough people to, staff all the places they have or create this expansion that he claims they're going to have. So it's
Yeah,
it's very stagnant. Um but at the same time, so we know that they're struggling to keep up the appearances that everything's great. And that's what Dave needs to do for the donors because the donors, that's if there's expansion, it's in the wallets of the donors. Because I'm telling you, I keep track of this. There was, just a few years, not too many years ago, you would only have a few people that had given $1 million or more. Now that's the base, right? It's like
right,
the people that go above 1 million are it's just so many, and he's getting these gigantic donations from people.
right.
If David Miscavige has gotten better at one thing in the last 15 years, it's getting huge donations out of wealthy people.
Yeah,
That's where Scientology's success has been recently, not in
agreed.
recruiting new people. The building new buildings is all just nonsense. But at the same time, there's that struggle. At the same time, that Scientology is not in a good place. I can't think of a less likely time when we're going to see any enforcement. So, Dave may be worried about his donors. He may be worried about bringing in money, might be worried about hanging on to people, but he doesn't have to worry about the FBI.
Nope.
He doesn't have to worry about the Department of Justice.
Nope.
And it's such a strange time because, I think, people like Leah Remini and Mike Rinder and Alex Gibney and Lawrence Wright have really immunized the public against the idea of joining Scientology. They know how ridiculous it is, thanks to these people that have done such a great job in public media. But it's really the government that's going to have to take the next step and bring these people justice, and they're just not interested right now. So
That's right.
it was what a strange time, Chris.
Very strange, very very strange. And I know that we and we wouldn't want, this government dealing with this group anyway. I mean, I just, yeah. I mean, with Pam Bondi connection and all the other stuff, I just want Scientology to stay the hell away from Washington D.C. Honestly, at least for now, and hopefully, in the not too distant future, something more sane and rational can come along. But in terms of dealing with these cults I'm talking about, right? Because right now the IRS is pretty much out to lunch. We had that story out of Miami a couple weeks ago where they went after some traffickers who were running a church operation down there. But that was small time compared to what was, as you pointed out, what was right up the road with Scientology, in Clearwater. So it's like, oh, good job, guys. But how about,
Right, right, right.
Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, so we'll carry on here. Tony keeps reporting. We'll keep talking. This is the end of this show this week. Tony, thank you for your reporting. What are we anticipating seeing this coming up this next 7 days?
Um, I'm waiting for Scientology's response, the newest response in the Leah Remini case. Remember,
Oh,
Leah,
right. That's right.
Leah's side had put in their part of the appeal, and there's Leah's a preliminary ruling in Leah's lawsuit is on appeal, and both sides are appealing, and so both sides had put in their initial appeal briefs, and now it's Scientology's turn to respond. And the first thing they did was ask for an extension, and if you remember, Leah opposed that. She said, "No, come on, let's get this going."
That's
And the
right.
court was like, "Okay, we understand, but we're going to give them an extension, but no more than that." Well, that deadline passed more than a week ago, and nothing from Scientology. They have been reminded of that, and I think it'll come in the next week. So I'm interested to see what they say about that, and that'll probably be the next big thing from court.
Cool. Cool. Maybe they're a little late because the Scientology attorneys are checking with Chat GPT as to whether they cited all the right case law. Maybe that's what the delay is. All right, folks. You saw it here first. There's Tony's Substack. Go to it, get subscribed, get your daily notifications. Check back in with us at the end of the week on Saturdays for the wrap up. I will see you guys next week. Bye bye.